Welcome, everyone. Hello, welcome, everyone. So our customers have been telling us that they face challenges working in hybrid cloud environments. They have complex on-premises applications and databases, but they want to take advantage of the cloud, its scalability, and its resources. They want to access their files locally, but they also want to leverage cloud management and edge and computing capabilities. They have years worth of security and compliance built into their systems on premises, but they also want to work with cloud management and monitoring and its analytics engines. AWS Storage Gateway can bridge the gap between on-premises and cloud. It's actually one of the few services that customers can implement and deploy in their data center outside the region. Therefore, it's one of the first services that customers deploy in their journey to the cloud. Hi again, my name is Tuğba Göksel. I'm a senior migration specialist here at AWS, and today I'm joined by Ed Laura and Cy Hopkins, senior solution architects. I'll walk over some of the use cases using AWS Storage Gateway, and then I'll turn it over to Ed, who's going to provide us a deep dive and share some of the key features you can leverage when building a hybrid data workflow. And then Cy is going to walk us through a demonstration of building an event-driven hybrid architect using AWS Storage Gateway. So our customers choose a hybrid cloud model due to various reasons. It could be performance reasons, it could be security reasons, or compliance reasons. Therefore, there are a lot of enterprises who will choose a hybrid cloud storage solution that provide ready access for their on-premises applications to data that lives in the cloud. Once customers figure out where to store the data, the next logical step for our customers to do is getting that data into AWS and figuring out how to access that data. And we have quite a few options for you. For online data transfers, we have AWS Data Sync, which is a service that provides a fast, simple, and secure way to get your data from on-premises or from other clouds into AWS. You can also use Data Sync to move your data between various AWS storage services. We have customers who use Data Sync to replicate, like make a second copy of their data for disaster recovery purposes. Or you can use the service to also archive your cold, infrequently accessed data. For external transfers, we have AWS Transfer Family, which is a managed service of transfer of files over certain protocols, such as SFTP. And it also enables our customers to move data between external third-party organizations or business units easily and securely. And some customers will choose hybrid access, where they want to keep some of their data on-prem and some in the cloud. And for that, we have AWS Storage Gateway. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. And once you bring the data over to AWS, you can build data lakes, you can leverage machine learning to run analytics and further process your data. Storage Gateway enables our customers to use all the AWS compute, storage, analytics, AI/ML services for the hybrid workloads that continue to reside on premises. And Storage Gateway is an umbrella term that comes with 3 gateway types. S3 File Gateway is our most commonly used gateway type. It translates native SMB and NFS files to Amazon S3 objects. And its primary use case is that it serves as a target to store your database backups and archives for data workflows. And we define data workflows as moving data from on-premises, from multiple sources on-premises into S3 to build data lakes. If you're working with physical tapes and you're looking to virtualize those tapes, Tape Gateway will be your option. And then lastly, we have Volume Gateway, our oldest gateway type, which acts as an archive repository to archive your whole data, infrequently accessed data such as video files. And by archiving those files, you can lower your on-premises storage costs. Let's dive deep into the specific use cases for when you can use S3 File Gateway. When you upload the on-premises data to S3 over NFS and SMB protocols using S3 File Gateway, it enables our customers to build data lakes and data processing workflows. And with one-to-one mapping between file and object, you can leverage our AWS native services such as SageMaker or Athena to run analytics or further process your data. Secondly, you can store your database backups using S3 File Gateway, like Oracle, SAP, Microsoft. And it also provides a cost-effective short-term and long-term retention of your data with the ability to life cycle to lower-cost storage tiers. And then lastly, you can use S3 File Gateway to archive your cold data, such as video files, and you can save, like I mentioned before, lower your storage costs. Storage Gateway provides customers a fast and easy way to access the cloud. And you can do that over standard protocols with no changes to existing applications. It provides up to 64 terabytes of cache. And that's quite a bit of cache on disk on local. It's optimized for data transfers, both ways going in and out of S3. For example, if you have an hour-long video and you only want to access 15-second clip of that video, we can pull down only that 15-second clip. It will help minimize the network traffic as well as help lower the egress costs as well. We've got all the security and compliance that you need. We're FedRAMP compliant and secure. And we have a cost-effective pay-as-you-go pricing model capped at $125 a month. Most of that cost comes from storage on S3, which is elastic, so you can tier it down to lower tiers as well. And lastly, it's integrated with other AWS services, management, monitoring, and in-cloud workloads as well. We've got hundreds of thousands of customers across all verticals. And now I'd like to share with you a recent customer success story with one of our customers, Apollo Tires. So Apollo Tires is a multinational tire manufacturing that serves consumers and industrial customers all around the world with 7 branches, 5 in India and 2 in Europe. Our customer was pressed for immediate storage expansion. However, they were facing scalability limitations and supply chain hindrances, and they were working off of a decentralized on-premises infrastructure. And they implemented S3 File Gateway as their hybrid storage service and migrated 160 terabytes of data using S3 File Gateway. And they scaled out quickly. They deployed the S3 File Gateway in one day, and they deployed it globally across their other plants. And results were phenomenal. They saved up to 90% in backup costs, which enabled their innovation, and it also modernized their manufacturing process. Our customer also leveraged in-cloud computing services such as EMR, where they leveraged the solution for interactive analytics, machine learning. They also leveraged SageMaker to build, train, and deploy their machine learning models. So this customer success story with Apollo Tires is a great example of how we at AWS enabled our customer to build an event-driven hybrid architecture. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ed for our deep dive.
All right, thanks, Tuva. So hi guys, my name is Ed Laura. I'm a senior product solution architect. I work on the Storage Gateway service team. If you have gateways that are deployed and you've talked to the service team, it's a good chance you've talked to me. But we're going to jump into a little bit of a deep dive on how the gateway works and how we can enable those data workflows with some key features that help us in this case. So, as Tuba mentioned, Storage Gateway is one of the few services that is designed to be implemented outside of the region within your data center or virtual environment, next to your application servers. The gateway is deployed as a virtual machine. We do have a hardware appliance that's available as well, but typically VMware, Hyper-V, Linux, KVM. When you download that gateway virtual machine, it has certain characteristics, minimum requirements for CPU, 16 gigs of RAM, but that can also scale. I consider that a small deployment, and you can scale that up to typically around 24 to 32 CPU and up to 64 gigabytes of RAM is what I typically recommend. What the gateway also has is at least two disks. One is the root disk. It's the 80 gigabyte drive that has all of the operating system, and we actually store and persist metadata so that we can actually represent that S3 bucket, which are objects, as a file system. You then have at least one data cache disk. So that cache disk helps us with the data transfer out charges, with the performance, that low latency, so you can scale that. It starts at 150 gigabyte, goes all the way up to 64 terabytes. And usually as a best practice, I recommend setting up multiple cache disks, even if it's on the same underlying storage. Just basically we get some additional striping that we benefits there. That gateway sits on your local network, so it connects to your client machines, NFS or SMB, using common protocols. We have that low latency cache disk. Usually recommend SSD. Sometimes NVMe if you have the luxury. As Tuba mentioned as well, we do optimize the data transfers to the cloud and from the cloud. She mentioned the 14-second clip of a video that comes in handy when we are storing things like media repositories for some of our broadcasting customers, allowing them to basically only pull down the data that they need, making it fast and cost effective. Everything's secure, in transit and at rest. And one of the key differentiators with the gateway is that we store files as individual objects, meaning we can then enable data workflows or other types of processes against that data directly in S3, so you could actually have other applications and other services that access that same data set and don't need the file protocol. So we'll talk a little bit about the life of a write, what happens. So in this case, on our on-premises environment, we've got an SMB client, and we've got our gateway. And when we write a file to the gateway, it lands on the local cache disk. That client receives an acknowledgement that that file has been written. Meanwhile, the gateway now has a third process where it has to upload that data into S3. That process does happen in near real time for small files, near instant. For larger files, of course, depends on your bandwidth and some other variables. Let's talk a little bit about how we can enable event-driven data workflows. We keep saying this word, data workflows, and we'll hopefully provide some clarity as to what that means. So in this case, another customer example here on the healthcare life sciences space. Is that you?
Yeah, question. But do you see any limits on the gateway? Because you have a project.
No
Do
question.
you see limits on the gateway where you use it and where you would not use it?
Yeah. Let's have a conversation maybe after this. Unfortunately, there's no Q&A during these sessions, I guess. So I appreciate the question, though, and I will answer that. There are limitations. The use cases that we recommended, database backups, so SQL Server, Oracle, writing database dumps to an S3 file gateway, archives, any type of on-prem storage system that you have. Typically, you've got 60 to 80% of that data is cold data. If you can identify it and want to archive it for infrequent access, that's a great use case. And then these data workflows where we need to get the data into S3. So primarily we need the data in S3 because we know we want to do other stuff with that data, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Where we don't recommend gateways is general purpose file sharing where you have typically end users accessing the gateway. There's certain limitations by being backed by Amazon S3 that we can't do things such as renames. So a rename operation for us, if you do at a top level folder and there's a million items within that, we would have to go do a million operations back on that S3 bucket. Whereas a file system, that's an instant operation. So in this day and age, we do have the FSX suite of offerings. And so for any type of general purpose file sharing, today we do recommend starting off with FSX, seeing if that can meet your needs. So we'll get back to this. So this customer, Exact Sciences, we've got in the healthcare life sciences space, they've got lab sites, physical sites with scientists and big genomic sequencers, all sorts of instruments. There we go. All sorts of instruments, microscopes and such. It's common for them to deploy an S3 file gateway to replace their on-premises storage system, which allows us to reduce that physical footprint in these remote lab locations while also getting that data into S3 as fast as possible. Once that data is in S3, this customer has built their own data management system leveraging multiple services within S3. There is a blog that goes into more detail about how they do this. I suggest you check that out if you're interested, where they then have compute operations and they trigger event-driven workflows once all of the data has landed in S3, and I'll show you guys in a second how we can know when that data has successfully made it to S3. But they'll use applications such as Lambda, EC2 instances for compute, and batch operations, as well as other ways to process that data. Once that data is processed, typically there's results that are written back to that S3 bucket, and often, sometimes customers will have a second site with a separate set of scientists who analyze those results. So we can actually spin up a second gateway. We can point it at that same S3 bucket, and we can read that data that was just put into S3. There's a feature called the cache refresh. There's an automated way to do that, and there's an API-driven way to do that, which allows the gateway to know about contents that already exist in that S3 bucket when you create those file shares. So one key feature that the Exact Sciences customer uses and others use is our file upload event notification types. There are two. One is individual file upload notifications. Basically, every file that's written to S3, we send a notification to EventBridge. And then there's a working file set notification. So in the case of the life sciences customers, it's not each file that's important that gets to S3. It's the entire data set that was written from that instrument. These instruments will write tens of thousands to millions of files within a single run. It's physical DNA strands that they're using, and it's not things that you can recreate that data, so it's important that that entire data set gets up to S3, and then we know that we can go ahead and process and compute against that to get those results, knowing that all of it has made it to S3. And we'll cover these a bit more, and there is a blog post on that as well out there. So our individual file upload notifications, again, we got the on-premises environment, the SMB client. It writes that file to the local cache, gets the acknowledgement back. That third step where we get that data into S3, where then we send an event to Amazon EventBridge, and an event is delivered when each file has been uploaded to Amazon S3. It's triggered, helps us trigger processing workflows based on a specific file, if you know a specific file that you're looking for. And in the demo, Sai is going to give you an example of what we mean there. Configured on the file share. So each gateway can have up to 50 file shares. And so we can configure this on a per file share basis. And you do that through the AWS Management Console. The second type is the working file set notifications. Again, that same SMB client writes a set of files, and we've got some media files in there. We know there's some large files that aren't going to be instantly uploaded to S3. That client, because it's writing to the local data cache, is going to happen very quickly. It's going to get that acknowledgement back that all the data has been written to the local cache, but our cache buffer is going to start to fill up, and we're going to need to offload and upload all of that data. So there's going to be some time there for us to get all the data to S3. So once we know all the data has been written to the local cache, one thing that you do need to do is this API driven. So you have to know, the client will know that it wrote all that data, and certain workflows will have different ways of knowing when the workflow has completely been written. So we have to actually trigger this API upload notification to the Storage Gateway service. Then once all the data is in S3, the gateway service will send an event to Amazon Event Bridge that tells you that all those files have been successfully uploaded to S3, allowing you to build that event-driven architecture. So we can process that data on the entire data set, knowing that it's there. Again, it's requested by the Notify When Uploaded API. You can find that in our API guide. So, when customers are looking to build these data workflows with S3 File Gateway, there's a number of services that we can leverage. In particular, the event-driven architectures is Amazon Event Bridge, being able to build an SQS, a queuing service, leveraging step functions to build your workflow, and SNS, right, to get notifications about when things occur. You can leverage all sorts of compute services, Amazon EC2, Lambda, AWS Batch. We've got all sorts of analytics services as well. Obviously, QuickSight for visualization, Amazon Athena for querying, Redshift, and AWS Glue for stitching things together. And then some of the more newer services are generative AI. We're seeing customers leverage SageMaker to build and train their machine learning models, Amazon Q as a fully managed service to get insight out of that data. We've actually got a session coming up tomorrow. It's a workshop hands-on where we'll be talking about and using Amazon Q to parse through a whole bunch of unstructured data and get, with the chatbot, and in Bedrock, all of your foundation models. So with that, I'll hand it over to Sai for a quick demo.
All right, I don't need that.
All right.
All right. So my name is Sai Hopkins. I'm a senior solutions architect, and I built a demo here today showing you how Storage Gateway can be part of an event-driven architecture. So now I'm going to try to talk through a demo as it plays and get the timing all right here. All right, so here we have in the architecture, we have an Active Directory, we have a Windows host that we're going to be using for remote access, and there's an S3 File Gateway that is set up on EC2 and registered with the Storage Gateway service. There's also an SMB share set up on the File Gateway, backed by our S3 bucket there, and the E drive on our Windows remote host is mapped to the SMB share. There's also a series of Lambda functions, event bridge notifications, step functions, things like that. This will be part of our event-driven architecture. And ultimately what's going to happen here is we're going to upload a number of files to our E drive. Once they hit the S3 bucket, they will be sorted based on some certain attributes. And then once the sorting is complete, then we will receive a notification through direct message into our Amazon Chime group. All right, now I can start it. All right, so here we have Storage Gateway in the EC2 console, or in the AWS console. It's running on EC2. The Storage Gateway could be on-prem in your environment as well. Here we have our share backed by our S3 bucket. Our share is authenticated into the Active Directory. And here we have our S3 bucket. So I've got documents, images, logs, and videos file or prefixes here. And these are the folders that the files will be, once they land at S3, they'll be sorted based on their file extension type and some S3 object level metadata. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload 5 files into the bucket here through the console. And these are going to kind of act as the control, right? So, because they're going to have different metadata than the files coming that will come from the storage gateway. But they do have the same extension type. So we're going to see if, like, everything I say is working correctly. All right. So let's take a look at the metadata of one of these files that was just uploaded. It's got a single key value pair, content type, image, PNG. It's the only one. All right. So if we look at our Windows remote host, on our remote host here, we have the E drive, which is mapped to our storage gateway share. And we see the 4 folders there. And we see that the 5 files I just uploaded aren't there. Well, that happened on the S3 side. So the cache is going to need to be refreshed. We'll do that towards the end of the demo there. And then also we have our dataset folder here. This contains PDFs, our image files, video files, log files. These are the files that I'm going to be sorting. One file to note is the upload event.txt file. This is kind of a dummy file that will be uploaded last. And this is when this file lands in S3, that event will trigger our event-driven workflow. And how this works is I've got a robocopy script here. And the robocopy script is going to copy everything from the dataset folder to the E drive. And then once that's complete, it's going to do everything but the upload event file. And once that's complete, it'll copy the upload event file last and kick off our workflow. Now, one thing that was set up as a setting on the S3 file gateway was the file upload events notifications. So every file that gets uploaded is going to send an event to EventBridge. And so that's how we're going to capture that event from the upload event.txt file landing in S3. So let's take a look at that EventBridge rule. So I've got a file upload EventBridge rule I created here. And so it is looking for the upload event.txt file, an upload complete into our specific bucket that's backing our share, coming from this specific gateway and this specific share. So once that event is matched, and then our target is a Lambda function, it'll run our Lambda function. And just take a quick look at our Lambda function here. Essentially what this is doing is the Lambda function is sending a request to the Storage Gateway API saying that we would like an event to be created when the cache of our Storage Gateway has been cleared. So this is the one that Ed was talking about. So the file set upload, right? So this is something that can only be requested through the API. So, and you need to request it every time you want this event to be created. So that's why it's part of our workflow here. All right, so we see here we have that EventBridge rule there, our Lambda function sending the request to the Storage Gateway service in our architecture there. All right. Now that you know what's going to happen, let's run our robocopy script. Start copying our files. And we go to our S3 bucket here. A number of those should come up pretty quickly. Yeah, we already got 79 objects in here. The smaller ones, like Ed said, move very quickly up and through the cache and up into S3. And then, it looks like we're starting to see some of the video files. These are half a gig. So there's quite a few of these. So these are going to obviously some of these are going to sit in the cache for a while. The cache is going to get backed up. It's going to, from the Windows side, it's going to look like all the files are in the E drive. Excuse me, all the files are in the E drive, but they're not fully up into S3, and we can't kick off our workflow until all our files are successfully uploaded to S3. So that's why we're going to need that notification to kick everything off. So our upload event file just got copied there. And so now we have another EventBridge rule looking for the cache event, or the working file set event, right? And so we're asking to look for it from our specific gateway, our specific share. It's got a very specific detail type we use, and when the full upload is complete. Now our target for this one is going to be a step function state machine. So let's take a look at that. It's a pretty straightforward step function, right? So it's got a Lambda function that's just going to be handling the sorting of the objects in the S3 bucket. And then once that's complete, it's going to send a notification to SNS. Take a quick look at our Lambda function, our sorting Lambda function. Essentially what it's doing here is it's kind of mapping the extensions to the prefixes that we want them sorted into. It deletes the upload event.txt file, clearing it for the next run. And then after this is where we kind of set some conditions on what is sorted beyond the extensions. And so you see there's two key value pairs there. There's the user agent AWS Storage Gateway, and then there's the user agent ID, and then that'll have the storage gateway ID that is passed to the step function from the event. All right, so we're waiting for the cache to clear and our state machine will then get started. So let's see if it's going. Do a refresh. Oh, okay, our state machine is running here. And so that's going to start, going to kick off the step function there. We go in here. Yep, our Lambda is running. And so if we go to our S3 bucket now, we should see files start to get sorted. Yeah, we went from 79 to 34. Our files are starting to sort. All right. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. So we've added that event bridge rule, looking for that working file set that kicked off our step function and is now running our Lambda. That is sorting all our files. So another refresh here. Now we're down to 12, a couple more log files to go. Okay, now we're done. Now as you see, the files I uploaded, which are PNG, which were part of the sorting in the Lambda, were not touched because of their metadata, or they lack the metadata needed. So if we go into a file that was uploaded from the storage gateway, we're going to see there's quite a bit of metadata on these files. And we have the user agent one that I pointed out, AWS Storage Gateway, plus the user agent ID with the storage gateway ID in it, determining that these files would be sorted. Okay, so let's go back to our E drive. We do a refresh on our E drive, and all the files are still there. Nothing's sorted. Well, everything happened on the S3 side. So we're going to need to refresh the cache. And to do that, we're going to do this manually here. You go into the share, and you refresh the cache. This could be part of the workflow. This could have been the final step of the workflow, refresh the cache, and just made it all automated. So we go back, refresh. Now everything is all synced up. All right, so our running sorting Lambda is done. It's sent, our notification has gone. So that means we should have a notification in our Chime group. And here's our job notifications chat group. And we have a new message here saying sorting notification complete on this storage gateway, on this bucket, at this time. Now, do keep in mind, like AWS Chatbot, that doesn't have to just work with Chime. It can work with Teams and Slack and many other HTTPS enabled services. So this is our final architecture. We uploaded a number of files into our E drive. Once they hit the S3 bucket, it kicked off our workflow, which ultimately sorted our files and sent a notification that they were complete. So if anyone has any questions about this architecture or anything else, feel free to hit me up after the event, or after we're done here today. So, Ed?
All right. Thank you, Sai.
Yep.
So, one of the newer things that we're seeing with the Storage Gateway is really customers that are looking to unleash data-driven innovation with our AWS AI, ML, and analytics services. A lot of these analytics services have been around for quite some time. And some of the newer ones are the machine learning and the things like SageMaker and Amazon Bedrock and Amazon Q. But know that there's a whole suite of services. We keep adding to them and we keep improving upon them. Things like Athena are very popular. QuickSight for visualization, as I mentioned earlier. And then we heard a customer earlier who's going to be leveraging EMR. So really, unlocking your business value with generative AI. AI is really meant to be generic, and then you can fine-tune that for a very specific task. What this is obviously going to help us with here is creating new, innovative, and engaging ways of interacting with data. It could be data that already exists, right? You might have repositories on premises that we could leverage, parse through, and get value out of that data. For me personally, things like notes from calls, and I can pump it in, have a chatbot, and get insights from all of this unstructured data that previously was really difficult to get some sort of summary from, long PDFs, etc. Productivity, right? Probably all across your organization, you can find ways to improve productivity, all sorts of different insights, clearer answers. Of course, we've got to worry about things like hallucinations, and that's where a lot of that fine-tuning can come into play, but all the tools are at your disposal to go and make those things possible. And then we're going to be able to do all sorts of creative things, right? Creating new content, ideas, conversations, a lot of images and videos, so there's really large repositories. And your unique data is the differentiator. If you've already built a data lake in Amazon S3, you're part of the way there. You can simply leverage these services, point to that same S3 bucket that it lives in today, and get more specific to your business goals. So, as we mentioned earlier, there are various ways to get data from these various data sources, whether it's on-premises, your NAS file and object environments. We've got tools to help. Other clouds has been popular as well. There's a session here, reInvent, for multi-cloud as well, to talk about how we can leverage AWS Data Sync to get data to and from other cloud providers, and third-party sources, external business partners and business units, leveraging things like Transfer Family for SFTP. So Storage Gateway, Data Sync, and AWS Transfer Family are part of our EC2 Edge data services that allow data movement to and from AWS. That data, when it gets in AWS, for things like AI, leveraging mostly S3 and Amazon FSx for Lustre. FSx for NetApp ONTAP is also becoming common there as well. But various ways to get the data in, various places to put the data, most commonly Amazon S3. All of our native services, SageMaker, Bedrock, and Q, will actually integrate directly with these data sources, making it very simple for you. And you then have the ability with your custom data to do retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, fine-tuning, and continued pre-training of these models. So we'll quickly wrap up. Key takeaways. You can upload files that are generated on premises to the cloud using Amazon S3 File Gateway. NFS or SMB file shares to access and store data from on-prem gets you into S3. Most typically, we can upload about 20 terabytes per day for a single gateway. Of course, there's variables there, like your networking, how much resources you give the gateway, and what type of file sizes they are, and numbers of files. We can build these event-driven data architectures to automate processes and really reduce those time to results. In the healthcare life sciences industry, it's really important. Their business value is getting those results as fast as possible. By leveraging an S3 file gateway, we are getting the data to S3 as fast as we can, allowing them to kick off those processes as fast as they can and get those results as fast as they can, and we can reduce that time to results. And then we can leverage all of these powerful services that are in the cloud, such as our analytics services, which we covered, compute, AI, and ML services to drive that business value. You can get started with Storage Gateway. There's all sorts of blogs, demos, use cases. I always say our public product pages do get a lot of attention in terms of having a lot of good, valuable data right on that public product page. Ours in particular certainly has a lot of links and blogs and really clearly states those 3 use cases: database backups, archives, and data workflows. And there's examples in blog content for each. So, get ready for a fun week. Thank you for joining us on this Monday afternoon. If you want to join us for more, there's a number of sessions. I mentioned multi-cloud. There is one for data sync that's in the MGM, STG215. STG218 is the workshop that I mentioned earlier that Sai will be running. It's a really fun, exciting one. You're going to get hands-on with data sync, storage gateway, and transfer family. And we're going to walk you through importing data into an S3 bucket from those various sources. And we're going to leverage Amazon Q to get insights. And Sai's got a really cool travel agency use case for that workshop. So it should be a fun one. STG215, petabyte scale migrations with AWS Data Sync. STG204, that's another one with data sync. And then 352, that will be me and my colleague Santosh Aranuri, who's also a storage gateway specialist and data sync specialist. We'll be covering in a Chalk Talk whiteboard session, very interactive, ask questions throughout. Highly recommend those sessions. Those are a lot of fun. We can take the conversation many different ways because we get up on that whiteboard. But we'll talk about how to really build these services at scale, data sync and storage gateway, to get data into the cloud as fast as possible, and then allow us to leverage those AI and ML event-driven architectures. You can always continue your AWS storage learning. There's learning plans and ramp-up guides. And thank you all for joining. Welcome to reInvent this year. And Ed Laura, Sai Hopkins, and Tuba Gospel. If you want to connect with us, feel free. We'll be sticking around for some questions if you guys want to chat afterwards as well. But appreciate you guys coming.
Thank you.